if there's a consumer product, how that impacts businesses. If there's a consumer product, how does that impact me? I think very much like a network TV producer. It's got to have a headline that's very grabby, and I have to get a takeaway from it. So a lot of times with new products, if I can't touch it, if I can't try it, I don't cover it. Because you're going to hear what I think about it. It's going to be very honest. And there is becoming a much bigger space for that kind of journalism and reporting in this new media world, in this new digital media. People want to know what I think about something. It didn't used to be that way. And I've been a journalist now for 20 plus years. We never used to have opinions. Now everyone wants to know one. And so it is pretty special to be able to stand up and give your opinion.
That's one of the mandates, actually, is that they want us to do first takes where you actually show your opinion. Don't just write a straight eight-piece story that doesn't betray any of your feelings. They want some sort of interaction. They want more attitude in stories. I think that's happened with the blogs, and that's why people like reading them. And I think we were always terrified of doing that. We were always afraid. It was always kind of blocking and tackling. It's like now they want a little bit of a twist, a little bit of snark sometimes. Not too much, but just enough to show what you think, and it shows some institutional knowledge, which is the phrase we use. And Ashley Editor-in-Chief has actually made a point of that. And actually, with John, we're talking about doing even more of that. And especially in stories that have political bents.
I have to say that I feel, they say write what you know. If you're a writer, write what you know. And that seems to translate into the news world as well. I mean, people like that more if you add a little bit of color in it. You kind of put that passion behind it.
It's hard though, because if you've been trained to write a certain way, you almost feel like this kind of reflective jerk when you do it, and you try to figure out how far you can push it. If you push it too far, then somebody goes, "Oh, you're an asshole for doing that." And sometimes they're right, and other times you push it just a little far enough. Like I did something on innovation and mentioned this in Apple, and I kind of mentioned that they cringe every time the word's brought up. They physically cringe when you bring that word up around them. And I thought they would hate that column. As it turns out, they actually really liked it because it was said with some sort of text or context, and it was said within a kind of a framework. That wasn't the lead, and that wasn't the end. That was just part of a larger story. But it's something that's an acquired knowledge, and it's rewarding. But it's going to be. I think we're going to do more of it. We just got to be careful on how we do it. Let's see. Do you guys want to ask questions? Tell me what you like and what you don't like. Yeah.
Just curious about the redesign. You guys are kind of living with it and enjoying it as a paper.
Yeah.
And then also a question I asked before, which is who we pitch. If so many of you cover so many different areas, if we feel like this is a Marco Della Cava story, it's a good lifestyle kind of story, like maybe what Sarah wrote about that tech house. Seems like a Marco Della Cava story I would have read.
Yeah, that would be a Marco story for us, absolutely.
Yeah. So should we pitch individual reporters? John,
if you ever have any doubt, just send it to me. I'll farm it out. I won't tell people to write it, but I will send it along to the right person.
And I just want to add, if you are pitching every single USA Today person you know, just tell me. Because I get a lot of what I think are great pitches, and then I don't know because I'm not in a daily meeting. I don't know that Jeff is already covering it, it's already covering it, somebody else. So just be open and honest and transparent about that. It would really save me a lot of time.
On the consumer side, just kind of roughly, we were asking about this earlier, and we're a relatively small team, so that there aren't extremely clearly drawn lines sometimes. Ed Bay, based in New York, is our main consumer tech product reviewer. He also takes a ton of briefings from a ton of companies. And Ed has evolved from a guy who 5 years ago, his job was to produce one column a week. He writes easily every day, sometimes more than that. He writes news, he writes analysis, and and sometimes has a hard time saying no. So he's a great guy to pitch. Jefferson Graham down in Los Angeles covers, he's got a couple of passions. He's become something of a video reporter, self-taught. He covers a lot of camera news. He does gadgets well. He does a lot of web services. He does a lot of kind of LA-based tech scene features. He is also, if you represent companies elsewhere across the country, Jeff from time to time will go out and do sort of Heartland tech community stories. He's in Phoenix this week, as a matter of fact, taking a look at the Phoenix tech scene. Mike Snyder, based in our McLean office, focuses primarily on sort of where tech and entertainment meets, on both the hardware and the services side. He's just started writing a new column for us on the weekend about for folks who are interested in saving on their cable bills. It's kind of a cord-cutting column. He's been writing a lot of content stories around that. He did a piece this past weekend about was a World Cup stuff. And
It's Jessica. We're going to have her just cover Google and Facebook. She's going to have her hands full with that. And in terms of the major companies, there are like 5 companies that we cover to death. Amazon is the other, Twitter, Samsung more increasingly, just because they're involved in head-to-head competition with a lot of the companies that we write about already. Microsoft is something that's becoming more relevant, so we're going to start covering that more. The thing we're going through is we get our marching orders from the East Coast really early, so we are scrambling every morning trying to catch up with what their demands are and their requests. So things for us kind of settle down by noon until the next wave of requests come in. So that's kind of the way we operate. So in the morning we're like probably pretty frenzied, and tomorrow will be another one of those types of days. I was going to ask you guys, are there certain stories that you are sick of us writing about, or the ones that you really want us to write more of? Because I sometimes think that we kind of beat things into the ground. And you know what? You can yell it out. I don't care.
Same with TechCrunch.
Yeah, exactly. Are there like too many robotic stories, drones, 3D printing? I mean, is there too much of that, or too much of Apple?
Not enough.
Was that? Twerking. There wasn't enough for our editor. I'm just wondering, I mean, because I kind of think we fall into that trap where we're so accustomed to covering things a certain way that we just kind of jump on it. And, it's our discretion. We're trying to figure out the best way to do it, but sometimes it's good to get some sort of feedback. We cover Apple quite a bit, like I think everybody else does too.
And those stories continue to do really well.
They always do. That's what we always write about.
Your iPhone could do it. It's a million shares before you know it.
Prescriptive stories like 5 things you need to learn about something, or 5 security tips. Those things do really well too. I mean, it's just like it's some things you take for granted, but they're the bread and butter. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm curious, how do you balance the kind of working and finding articles versus like heavy-hitting journalism? Because I guess I'm kind of really old school, I grew up reading the paper and newspaper every day, and I still actually read newspaper and paper.
It's like so many different audiences. I mean, we've got we're like big in the Midwest and the South, and even the Northeast, not so much on the West Coast. So we have totally different audiences and totally different interests in what we're writing about. So it's like a balancing act. And there are times I think Nancy and I are like balancing 6 or 7 stories at the same time and just losing our minds, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And it's like landing planes. It's like there are like 7 planes coming in on the runway, and you're trying to get them all to land smoothly without crashing into one another or circling the air pad. I mean, that's to me the biggest challenge. It always will be. And there's more interest than ever among the editors back east. They are also sometimes of the opinion that we just pick up the phone, like the bat phone, and call Bill Gates and say, okay, what about this? Can you tell us a little bit more about this? We're USA Today, you should be telling us this. So that's kind of one of the traps we also fall into. So we kind of have a lot of masters we're trying to answer to. Oh yeah, John?
Two other things actually. They may seem obvious, but for whatever reason, a lot of PR people don't get that. One is forward-looking always. So, you know, there are certain things that happen at the same time every year or every week or every quarter. You know, some of the new product categories that are coming, whether it's Samsung or Qualcomm talking about health technology, Google talking about glass, Google talking about cars, Amazon now talking about a phone. You know, the time to pitch something related to that is in the lead up to, not afterwards. It still amazes me that I get pitches that are for immediate news on the day that Apple is giving their keynote, right? Or Twitter is giving their first earnings report. I mean, that's not going to get any coverage. I'd love to take the time to tell people that, but that's not my business to tell them how to do their job. So I think it would be very beneficial in terms of the use of your time to really try to be aware of the news cycle that the reporters or columnists are dealing with. Yeah, I mean, that's the most important one, I think, is to try to be forward-looking and to try to be cognizant of the schedule, of the news cycle, if you will, because tech does have a news cycle, both annually and quarterly and sometimes even weekly.
I'll say we do a lot of funding stories, not so much anymore seed and Series A, we're trying to get away from that, but a lot of funding stories. And what really floors me is when people pitch, and I'm going to ask you what your question is real quick, but what floors me is people say, hey, we're getting, we acquired someone, or we've been funded, and they don't have any data. They don't have the numbers, they don't know, they don't tell me who funded them, they don't tell me anything. That's a big no-no. Like, have it all together in one paragraph, preferably. Tell me why this is important. Don't just say, hey, we've been funded, and like, expect to get coverage. But I cannot even tell you how many people have done that, and I'm actually shocked that there's been that many. I thought that would not be a problem.
Have you guys ever covered a press release? Or, I mean, not ever. In the last year or two, has somebody sent you a press release and you've done a story out of it?
No.
No. I usually ask for that information after the pitch.
Sometimes I use it. I mean, sometimes I'll ask them to send it to me with the company background and with some just basic information, just to save time. So I have to. Yes, Ann?
I read all of you. I have read all of what you guys have written, and I enjoy it. But I'm curious, what do you read? Like, if you really want to learn about something fun or for business, what do you read?
I start my day with usatoday.com.
I read the New York Times every morning.
I read the Beat Deck.
That's actually not a bad one, actually. Twitter's the best wire service in the world. Yeah, I read that every day. I read that all day, actually.
I have a list of people that I keep that are really forward-thinking people, you know, on Twitter, and I read those. I see what they're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Twitter's that's the best. That's the best news source by far.
TechMeme's another good one.
Yeah.
TechMeme. Kowalski with the. Oh, you guys are I'll think of it.
Guardian and Reuters Tech News at the beginning of every day, because usually because of the time zone thing, they're halfway through their day already. So usually they'll have more than just the news. They'll have some type of analysis already up, and I don't want to duplicate that if I'm writing off the news analysis.
I like to find out what's on the leaderboard of product hunt.
I know editors back east read MarketWatch.
So we.
That's an inside joke. Every time MarketWatch runs something, oh my God, did you see what they just did? That's sorry, that's a little bit too close to home. I'm just going through a little catharsis right now. I'm all right.
New York Times, Wall Street Journal. Those
Journal, yeah, the
start my
journal's great.
day
Yeah.
With that, CNN with for TV stuff.
CNBC is a good cheat sheet, right? You know, the funny thing too is like the irony is that we have more readers than ever with our prints. We kind of almost treat it like a stepsister or whatever, stepbrother, and yet every company that ever talks to us, whether it be Apple or the smallest startup, insists they be in prints. It just, every time I mention it back to the editors back east, they kind of dismiss it, or they just like, oh, that's nice. But I have to say that there's not one company I can think of that doesn't want to be in print, and it's like this. It's a strange thing. It's like Google, Facebook, they're all obsessive about it. I'm not sure what that ever is going to change.
And I would actually say, as well, there's a big opportunity for tech stories in our print section. There's a huge appetite. We seem to kind of fill the money section those days.
Yeah, we do. It's like the tech section. It's not really the money section anymore. You know, there's a weekly that we have called USA Weekend. That reaches 22 million people. We're going to start using that as a carrot to get people who are difficult to land as subjects for profiles. I won't say who, but that gets the attention. You say 22 million people on a Sunday as an insert in numerous papers. I've been using that, dangling that in front of Apple and Google, and it's actually something we're going to start doing more of actually in the coming months.
Just one quick thing, because I talk about annually and quarterly, monthly, whatever. My deadline, depending on the day of the week, is either 11 a.m., noon, sometimes later. Sorry,
11 a.m. or noon.
Yeah. So if you're going to, most of the interviews I do are during the afternoon, essentially. Because as John said, the deadlines are East Coast time. So when we file, it's usually in the morning, and then in the afternoon is when we're taking a look at later in the week or the next day. But anything having to do with that day's news usually has to be done pretty early, Pacific Coast time. Or it's just, it's stale and it's not of any use to anyone, not anyone back east.
With video for USA Today, we're sometimes shooting video 4 to 6 weeks before it actually airs. 4 to 6 weeks, especially if you're pitching back to school, Father's Day. 4 to 6 weeks.
I didn't realize this.
We're filled up in August right now, and poor Nancy has to deal with, hey, what about this idea? And I'll get it in by Friday. I think I can run on Saturday. And there's a lot that you have to do with video that you might not think about. And just, these guys deserve so much credit.
So I'm going to try to rescue John from something he said earlier about if you don't know who to send it to him.
You're going to do it anyway, so might as well.
I mean, the problem with that, though, is I think you need to be doing your research to target your pitch more than that, because if you're sending it to everyone, maybe your idea is not so focused that it's of interest to one person. And
I don't think any of you guys do that.
I get that John said,
Claire Booty
or
on the other
Nancy
hand.
said you should cover this. John said you should cover it. I get a lot of that now.
It's called passing the buck.
Yeah. I know it's crap most of the time. It's not true.
I'm curious, is it, I've never worked on that side of the fence, is it possible, as John said, to use certain things for a carrot or a stick or timing? Are you guys able to do any education on the executive side when you're dealing with them, so that, or is it just, if they want it, you give it to them when they want it? I think that might explain a lot of the poorly timed press releases that I get. That's what I guess, because I think anyone who's doing their research would not.
Are you talking about counseling executives?
Yeah, to be aware of like the news cycle and what they're competing against and stuff like that, or do they not want to hear that? And I mean, I bring it up as interesting only because even though, let's say now Sarah and I do very different stories, it sounds like we're getting some of the same things, which is people that send pitches but don't give us the information we might need that could really turn it into a story that might be
It might be an awesome
unique.
story. Yeah, it might be so awesome, and you're like, why is this unique? If you pitch, hey, I have this really cool CEO that wants to talk about in depth about overall 3D printing. Come meet him in San Jose. I go, we have done 3D printing. I'm not going to San Jose. I've never heard of this guy. So tell me, like, what's interesting about this person and what about 3D printing, and come meet me near my office, and you'll have a lot easier idea. And I understand it's tough. You're dealing with, maybe someone who doesn't understand it. You have to educate them, and that's a whole other, that's a whole other level to take it to. But yeah, you're gonna get my ear a lot easier, and probably all these guys' ears if you put some details in there. And I'm sure all of you do that.
Did you want to ask a question? Sorry.
Actually, half question, half comment, but as a tech CEO, someone who does his own yards, still works with the firm, I love when journalists say, here's what I want, here's what I hate. Owen actually at one point wrote shouldn't spray and pray, we shouldn't, spam, we should target content to things outside of gatherings like this. That information isn't super available. And so a short little blip on somewhere online where what you guys want, we will be very, very interested in respecting.
I would, if I was trying to place a story somewhere, as you often try to do, I think it behooves anyone to go back and read at least a week of somebody's Twitter feed to see not only what they cover themselves, but what they're interested in. Because I tweet a lot of stories that I don't write just because they're just enough outside my bailiwick or just because I don't have time, but I think they're interesting. And so, going back over somebody's Twitter, if they tweet often enough, a week might be enough, maybe 2 weeks. And their Twitter profile, like as on mine, I'm very specific about the type of stories that I do want. So there are ways outside of these, but I understand what you're saying, that a little more information might speed the process along from both sides.
You know what really appeals to me is a story that is kind of like off the beaten track, that's a little contrarian, that no one else has done, that's just a little bit strange. Because I think, we do the same stories over and over every day. There's kind of something that appeals to me is something that's just not quite right or just a little off center. I know maybe that's because I'm strange, but I think I really do I think people actually gravitate to those types of stories. Because I think when you start reading the press coverage, it all kind of seems as if it reads the same, especially during a big event. That's why on Twitter you see people bitching and moaning about, here's another, I'm not going on Twitter today because I'm tired of this Apple or Google news all day, and they in a sense kind of avoid it. So anyway, that appeals to me. See, if the stranger the better. Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah. How often do you write, it's a two-part question, so I'm not sure. How often do you write without a pre-brief and just sort of on information given to you? And when do you want to schedule the pre-brief based on when the news is released? Do you want it the day before, 3 days before, 2 weeks before? I understand there's no hard and fast rules, but I'd love to sort of hear your understanding about how you like to work.
Well, anything, on the consumer and the product side, we can debate embargoes and pre-briefs all day long. To the extent that they make our lives a little bit easier, it's really kind of almost on a writer by writer basis, what the preference is. Again, somebody like Ed Begg is juggling a ton. If you could get on his radar early, that's better, because he's just got a lot that he's trying to manage and schedule. And anything that you can do ahead of time with him in particular helps us make sense of the unexpected announcement.
Which happens every day, by the way.
But personally, in the past year or so, I've been doing more writing, and I have no time for that. I try to kind of fill in some content gaps on the consumer side, like in mobile hardware, some app stuff. And for me, if you could let me know about something that I might be interested in at least a week ahead, again, so that I can factor it into the 10,000 other things that I'm doing every day, very helpful. But there really aren't any hard and fast rules. Pre-brief, a day before isn't that massively helpful unless it's like huge and you're giving us a break on it.
I think we're out of time.
Yes.
All right, thank you guys. Thanks for coming.